All hands on deck and hey, hot shot. Do you like to read Grisham novels? Do you fantasize about delivering oral arguments before the Supreme Court? Do all of your friends say that you ought to be a lawyer? Well, here's your chance to strut your stuff, and be like a staff judge advocate attorney in the movie A Few Good Men. You know you have to be way better than Tom Cruise, right? There are a lot of jobs that you can take to prepare to become an attorney. A legal secretary, or maybe even a paralegal, but in those jobs, you may be able to tell everyone that you worked around a lot of attorneys in a prestigious law firm, or maybe even pick up some legal terms to impress your friends. But a military legal specialist actually has the chance to build a high-profile criminal case, and the COVID-19 outbreak aboard the Nimitz-class aircraft carrier USS Theodore Roosevelt gives you a chance to develop the skills that you will actually need to graduate from law school, because in law school there is only one final comprehensive exam, where your professor will present a fact pattern, and you have to be able to think like a lawyer to spot the issues, which is what a military legal specialist does every day. Just think. You might even get a job with the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, a big-time NCIS agent, just like on TV. Are you ready to shove off? All ahead full. I have taken the time to lay out the basic facts, and as a former legal specialist for the Ranger Regiment, I have begun to prepare the case for the prosecution. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, Mr. Phelps, is to prepare the defense argument for Captain Brett Crozier, the commander of the USS Theodore Roosevelt, and, even though this tape will not self-destruct in 5 seconds, yours is truly a mission impossible. The USS Theodore Roosevelt, from the 17th of January until at least April, was one of only 2 aircraft carriers, Nimitz-class, nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, in the Pacific Ocean, and equipped with 2 with Westinghouse A4W reactors, together generating 190 megawatts of power. With this capability, a Nimitz-class carrier is literally one of the fastest naval ships in the world, able to even outpace every other surface ship in its supporting carrier group, and has an official, unclassified, maximum speed of 30+ knots. Suspiciously, around the same time that the USS Theodore Roosevelt identified COVID-19 infections, the USS Ronald Reagan, the only other aircraft carrier, also a Nimitz-class, nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, found infections aboard, and at a time when the nearest other aircraft carrier groups to support contingencies in the Pacific were 2, of a total of 11 Nimitz-class, nuclear-powered aircraft carriers were deployed to the Middle East, while a total of 5 others were in U.S. ports, undergoing long-term services and overhauls. Ironically, around the same time, an outbreak was reported aboard the Charles de Gaulle, one of the flagship aircraft carriers for the nation of France, and, in modern naval battle, the days of broadside-firing cannon have yielded to the air power age, and aircraft carriers are the primary platforms for surface-to-surface warfare. Reporters for the Daily Mail, a publication based in Britain, provided a better strategic frame of reference for these unfolding events in a story published in April, yet not even repeated by any major U.S. press organization. The attack launched upon the United States Naval Forces could not have been more perfect than had Admiral Chichi Nagimo, the Japanese admiral in the Imperial Japanese Navy during World War II, who had led Japan's main carrier battle group, the Kido Batai, in the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Indian Ocean Raid and the Battle of Midway, because it virtually removed the threat of U.S. influence in the Pacific, giving the People's Liberation Navy for the People's Republic of China sea dominance, a nation that had only acquired its very first aircraft carrier in 2014, the Ruger. a conventional aircraft carrier that was only 68% complete when it was recovered from salvage from the former Soviet Union in 1998, and took almost a decade to refurbish and retrofit for launch. The Chinese Communist Party launched its second aircraft carrier in December, the same month in which a novel coronavirus had emerged in the central mainland that would develop into a pandemic and threaten the world, as an invisible enemy. Miraculously, President Xi Jinping is the only world leader to date to claim total victory over COVID-19, and without even developing a vaccine. Do those facts suggest anything to assist you in your defense of Captain Crozier? It certainly does not look good. LYV Science, a popular science magazine, a consortium of actual scientists producing science content for non-scientists, attempted to trace the clues left behind aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt, found the trail run cold, claiming that asymptomatic infection made it practically impossible for anyone to determine when, where and how the pandemic pathogen got aboard. But apparently they lacked the expertise of the Chinese doctors in Wuhan, who early began to associate a pneumonia of unknown etiology with the SARS virus that had erupted in Hong Kong in 2003, and who began to use that template to identify at least 41 laboratory-confirmed infection cases by the 14th of January. 3 days before the USS Theodore Roosevelt had set sail from its home port in San Diego, a naval base where as many as 43 naval warfare vessels are moored. In addition, these popular scientists/journalists failed to take notice that a sign and a symptom are two distinct manifestations of infection that are widely recognized by treating and practicing physicians, and, perhaps, those popular scientists were unaware that indicia like coughing or sneezing, which the CDC has actually recognized as the primary means of transmission for COVID-19, is not identified as a symptom, but rather an asymptomatic sign of infection. And, naval investigators who have examined the facts, reviewing hundreds of medical records recovered from the ship's records, after a total of 1,412 laboratory-confirmed cases of infection had disabled a major warfare platform in the Sino-Pacific area of operations, amounting to over 1/5 of the ship's crew, have established that, based upon cases treated by clinical professionals, coding reports presented by patients to sick call for various ailments that may involve reports of a cough, shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, fever, chills, muscle pain, or sore throat, but also new loss of taste or smell, anorexia, myalgia, dyspnea or sputum production, from the time that the USS Roosevelt set sail from San Diego. There appeared, among 385 entries recorded between the 2nd of January and the 7th of April, there were only a total of 43 from sailors who exhibited influenza-like illness, or ILI, symptoms, 78 with respiratory issues, and 78 reports of diarrheal maladies. The established indicator for an outbreak aboard a naval warship the size of the USS Theodore Roosevelt established by the U.S. Navy is 15 cases or 0.3% of the ship's crew, and it is of note that these investigators empirically determined that the only public health concern that arose during that entire period, between the 2nd of January and the 7th of April, that surpassed the official outbreak threshold was not for the novel coronavirus SARS-CoV-1 infection and disease of COVID-19, but rather an outbreak of norovirus that took hold shortly after the ship's departure from San Diego. That bears repeating for your defense preparation. Between the 2nd of January and the 7th of April, that surpassed the official outbreak threshold was not for the novel coronavirus SARS-CoV-1 infection and disease of COVID-19, but rather an outbreak of norovirus that took hold shortly after the ship's departure from San Diego. Moreover, these naval clinical analysts determined conclusively that Although the first reported cases of COVID-19 were reported on the 23rd of March, when 3 sailors reported to sick call, complaining of a loss of smell, the first infections probably occurred at some point after the 8th of March, when the ship made a port of call in Da Nang, Vietnam. A total of 35 sailors, who had attended a 200-participant banquet on shore and who had stayed at the same hotel where 2 British citizens were identified as being infected, were immediately placed into quarantine. But every single one of those sailors tested negative for infection at the end of quarantine, so it is clear that these sailors did not set off the outbreak, and, back at sea, there was very little opportunity for any other infected persons to board and introduce the pathogen to the ship's company and crew. That's enough information for now, mate, as you to begin to prepare your defense. In the next episode, we'll introduce you to the aircraft carrier Capitan, who the world socialists are declaring as a hero over the imperialistic tendencies of a president who campaigned on a slogan of making America great again, and about the ship's capabilities that were removed from that theater of operations when COVID-19 came aboard, undetected. And, in our final installment, we can proffer the charges under the United States Military Code of Justice, as we review the significant actions taken by this commander during a time of increasing international tensions, despite being a graduate of the United States Military Academy at Annapolis. Go Army! Beat Navy and ship ahoy until next time. Bon voyage!
This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.